everybody, and welcome to Azure Lowlands 2023 on the panels. We're sitting here today on the sofa with some amazing guests, and together with Callum White and I, we will be your panel host for this session. So let's head over to talk about the future of cloud, the future of Microsoft Azure, with our guests that are sitting here. So let's quickly introduce them. Magnus, Laura, tell who you are, where you're from, what you do.
So I'm Magnus, I'm from Sweden, I'm an Azure expert. I've been that for a very, very long time, so some people claim that I have something to say about the future of Azure. We'll see how that goes.
My name is Laurent Bugnon. I work for Microsoft in Azure for about 6 years now, so a little bit less long than you, and I'm not sure why they pair me with him, but I'll be here. So
You're the intelligent, right? And good-looking one. That's you.
I'm not sure about
and
that.
I'm just a
well,
seat filler.
We'll see about that.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. It's amazing to have you here, and of course to pick your brains and hear about your expertise and your predictions. But before we go to the future, I just want to look back to the past. Like, what was the first time you heard about Azure or worked with Azure?
Do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. I mean, back then I was actually not in that field at all. And I was a Microsoft MVP and a regional director for a long time, but more in the client side, actually. And regional directors are amazing people. They are not paid by Microsoft. They are partners, but they are very, clever people, if I may say so, even though I was one myself and you are one. And they kept talking about the cloud. And so I was in my head thinking, if I want to continue, a successful career in software, I should probably look into that. And back then I was not working for Microsoft at all. And one day, interestingly enough, I got a call from somebody who had just been hired at Microsoft, my good friend Scott Kate, who said, "Hey, we create this new team. Would you like to join?" And I said, "Are you sure you're talking to me? Because I don't know anything about the cloud, literally." And they said, "Yes, because you're good at teaching. So you're going to learn the stuff, and then you're going to teach what you learn to people." And it was probably one of the best decisions of my life, to be honest. Not because it's Microsoft, but because at that time, I think this conversion going from client application development, which is let's face it, it's a little bit messy. Like there are so many technologies and it changes all the time. And I was a little bit tired of that. And going to the cloud felt like, okay, that's really where I can finish my career. Maybe, I don't know, I'm 52 now. I don't think I will reconvert to. And anyway, I did back end, I did front end. I'm kind of done now, right? So yeah, and Azure is just amazing in the sense that I keep learning every day. Like there are new services coming every day. Now I feel that I understand enough to be dangerous, but nonetheless, always new things to learn. So it's a great time, yeah.
Brilliant.
What about you?
So yeah, interestingly, I was in the audience when they announced what was then called Windows Azure. That was the first announcement. I was at the PTC conference where that was announced, and I was standing there. I was the kind of person that I liked architecture, and I kind of was like the API was my user interface, basically. So I was a server guy. I was on that side of things. And then Microsoft announced Ray Ozzie was the CTO at Microsoft at that point, and he
I was there too.
You were there?
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
So he's walking on the stage, and he's like announcing a new service in the cloud. Is almost literally what he said, and it was positioned as a service on the web tier of computing. That was like the understanding of cloud at that point. And so I was there in the audience, and I felt like this could actually be something cool. I'll look into that. And then I became the first Azure MVP in the Nordics, first one that there was. And if I get another renewal, it's happening now, right? Essentially these
very soon,
days,
July 6th.
right, very soon. And if I do that, then I will have 12 consecutive Azure MVP titles. So I was there when it literally started. Yeah, that was cool.
Wow. So I don't think you're quite claiming to be one of the fathers of Azure, but 12 years of contributions to the Azure community means
sure.
you've definitely had an impact.
So what I commonly say is that I'm sure that there are people who are much more skilled and better at doing Azure stuff than myself, but they haven't done it for longer. so there's that.
So I guess you're both perfect people to talk to about what the future holds for Azure. So is there anything that you're right now particularly excited about in the Azure space? Like is there a service or a kind of an innovation that's been happening that you're particularly excited for?
Yes. Many. I mean, personally, I'm a developer, so my focus on Azure, I'm not an infrastructure person. I have never been. I'm definitely not a security person. We had a great keynote about security, and I'm not that. But for me, it's really, what is exciting is really how quickly you can convert an ID into something which is actually working. And I'm not saying that it's, you know, the perfect solution that you're going to bring to market, but at least it allows you to try things really fast, right? So I love that very much. And also, of course, I mean, you know, I wouldn't work for Microsoft if I didn't mention AI, right? So I think the official term that we are using right now is that we are infusing AI everywhere. And so even services which are not, which you wouldn't necessarily think about, like for example, I use Visual Studio a lot as a developer, and you know the AI services that they have inside there are just there, and it's funny because sometimes you don't even notice them, right? Like they just pop up, and then you're like, oh, that's cool, but you don't realize. So anyway, there is AI pretty much everywhere now. And yeah, it's an exciting time to be a developer. I've been saying that for the past 25 years, I think, probably. But I feel that this acceleration of things is a little bit scary sometimes, also, to be honest, right? Responsible AI is something that we need to absolutely think about because, you know, in the wrong hands or in, you know, with the wrong intentions, it can be really dangerous, or even if people are just lazy. But nonetheless, I think that there is really a big future there. So I like being in that space. It's really a fun space to be, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I like how, obviously, from Microsoft, you're towing the company line. You're supposed to talk about AI right now, so that's why you're doing it.
Well, I mean, no, I mean, there is definitely something like that, but at the same time, let's face it, it's really exciting, right? I mean,
yeah,
I'm not, you know me, right? I'm not, I've never been somebody who sells the company line, like you say.
No.
It just happens to be something which is happening right now, and the fact that we are in the, you know, in the forefront of that and observing it all, even if we are not experts or anything,
it's very exciting.
Really exciting.
And so I'm a sort of a Azure fundamentalist of sorts in a way that the basics still rule, the basics still apply, because none of the services none of the fancy schmancy services that we see, all the AI and all the things, none of that could have ever been built without the fundamental cloud platform to stand on. That's where I kind of live and breathe, because many of my customers are taking their services and things to the cloud, and they need to understand the basics. So I don't want to like pull it all the way down to those basics, but you should talk about what you love and hopefully you love what you do. And I happen to be in that fortunate position that all of those services, you know, coming to your question, what is cool in Azure right now? All of the services, all of the data, and all of the like security data and compliancy data, and we had a great security keynote here at the conference, right? All of that data is there. All of the services are in the platform, except we're not using them. Just generally speaking, we need to use them much more. So what I'm excited about is how these services keep evolving and keep getting better and better and better, so that pretty much they are coming to a for dummies stage, right? Where you can just turn them on and they basically cover 98% of your issues by just turning them on. But then there's more than that, and I guess that's what I'm preaching about, that people need to understand to use the services that are in the platform. They're already there.
Yeah, one thing which is exciting right now in Azure, it's very anticlimactic, but it's basically the very incremental nature of change means that you probably don't have to relearn everything. Now, obviously, if you need a new service, right? And I'm talking later about cloud native in the sense of, you know, building applications with components and
to that point exactly.
Yeah,
right?
platform as a service, etc. So obviously, suddenly you say, okay, I want to use I don't know Key Vault, and I don't know Key Vault. You need to learn it, okay? But what I like is really once you use a service, like if you use I don't know Logic Apps or Azure Functions, whatever, they keep adding new stuff, but it doesn't feel that they are breaking it.
No,
it's just incremental, and suddenly you're like, oh wow, okay, I can do that. This is cool, but the knowledge you had remains. And again, coming from client application development, where we have been through so many stacks of web and mobile and you know Windows and Mac and etc. It's very refreshing actually to feel that, because it's so much more stable.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the point, right? That the fundamentals still really apply. Yeah.
From the angle of learning new things. So how can we, as advocates for Azure, be it in our companies or as your job, how can we help people to consider adopting Azure and the cloud over, say, something like, I know we're not allowed to talk about AWS or GCP, but over one of those platforms? What makes Azure the choice? Why is that the exciting cloud to be on?
Well, I mean, you know, I have tons of respect for our competitors. Obviously, I think that we all win at that game.
Keeps you sharp.
Somewhat. Yeah, yeah.
It keeps you sharp.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, there is tons of innovation in every space, right? So this is really cool. One thing that I like, and it's not because, I mean, I was hired to do that, so I'm really happy that it happens, but I feel that our educational material is really up there, you know. And so I collaborate with the people at Learn a lot. So for those of you who don't know, learn.microsoft.com, right? This is where we have our training material. And we have really a large crew of people who dedicate literally their day job to creating content, right? And it's not something that I necessarily see as much in, and again, right, with a lot of respect in our competition. I think that we really have people, and having worked with them, I mean, we just had builds 3 weeks ago, right? It's literally months of preparation. So we have thousands of people who dedicate their day job for months in those difficult, you know, financial times to create an experience where after that you can go online and at no cost find all the material, right? So I think that for anybody who is a student, who is a new learner, or even an advanced learner, you can find really this material, and this is really cool.
I will say as well on that note that compared to some other cloud platforms,
in all respect,
yeah, the documentation on Learn is so much more friendly in the sense that it will give you an example of how to do something in PowerShell. It'll give you an example of how to do something with the Azure CLI, but it will also give you the instructions of how to do that in the portal if you can do it in the portal. Yeah. Whereas a lot of other platforms are saying, here is the script you need to run to get this to work, and it's not necessarily approachable or friendly unless you understand that. But it still comes with a learning curve. In all
that's the developer thing. I'm not going to do the dance. Don't be afraid. But Ballmer on stage, you know, shouting developer. That's like the DNA of Microsoft, and that was long before my time. But that's the main reason why I'm excited to be there is because I feel we have respect for developers and we really try to help them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's just a funny anecdote from the documentation stuff, though. In a production system, they were complaining about some performance things, and I looked into the types of requests that was going to Azure Storage Account, and it turned out that there were plenty of more requests than there should be. So I looked into the code and I realized that, hey, there's too many gets on this thing here. And I looked at the code, and sure enough, it was a literal copy-paste from the sample that they had copied and pasted the code and pushed that to production. So what they kept doing all the time was making a request to check if the container was available, if it was there. Ouch. And they pushed that to production, which means that literally they're doing at least a third more requests than they ever needed. So those round trips added, they compounded and then literally just remove that line and 30% performance right there. So
just enough documentation.
So be careful about the documentation copy-paste.
Just enough documentation can make you very dangerous, yes. For sure.
So yeah, Laura, I have to say you really do put your heart and passion into Learn Live. How many shows have you done?
I believe 254 as of yesterday. Yeah, we are taking a little break now, but yeah, multiple times a day. So that multiple times a week. Sorry. So that's my day job really. It's to produce that show. Thank you for mentioning it. So aka.ms/learnlive. It shows where we have really experts going through a Learn module. And it's actually nice because I was checking the roster of speakers, and I was like, oh, I work with him, I work with her, I work with them, you know, etc. And a lot of very diverse experts, and it's a good show.
Yeah, definitely Learn Live. It also is the power of the community that we have, like you said, speakers from all over the world. And you, Magnus, you also create a learning platform. It's maybe not Learn Live or the Learn documentation, but how about Global Azure? You want to tell us a bit more about that?
I can do that. Yeah, sure. So Global Azure is briefly, it's a global happening for community, and it's fun in such a way that it's just lets any community, for any reason, join and learn about Azure. And we don't, subscribe or, you should be talking specifically about this. It's more of a hashtag, basically, and a website that brings us all together. And the power of that is that during Global Azure, hundreds of communities, literally, around the globe, everywhere, are learning about Azure. And the power of community is a completely crazy thing. We didn't know what we started when we did that. It was completely accidental because we just said, hey, let's do, I was a freshly, minted, baked Azure MVP, and if you're there you should be doing community things, so let's do a community conference. And a friend of mine who was the second Azure MVP in Sweden, and he said, well, I live in Stockholm and I live in Malmo, so let's see what we can do with Azure together. Let's have an event on the same day. What if we do a remote session? And then was like, okay, hey, how about we ask, we have some friends over in the Netherlands, and we know those guys in Belgium, and oh, that guy over in London. And the first time we did Global Azure, we didn't know what we started, but it turned out the first year it was 93 locations in 36 different countries, which was nuts. So it's all about community and excitement about learning about Azure. That's what we do with Global Azure, just for fun.
Yeah, it's an awesome event. I mean, I try to speak every time at least one of them, and I really like it. So now they this year was in the. I went to the Munich one this year.
Yep.
Our friend Phil was organizing.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
And it was hybrid, so it was also nice because you have this contact with people, and being streamed, of course, is such an easy access. So yeah, kudos on that.
Yeah, thanks.
I can say from hosting the London one that the breadth of the topics that we had was incredible. So all in one space, all under this Azure umbrella.
Yeah,
I can learn about an AI topic, going to a security topic, going to how do I scale my web application, and everything in between. And
but the
and
passion,
I didn't feel out of place.
That's exactly the passion. Is like it's by community for community. It's people who are excited about technology and they just can't shut up. And
it's truly global.
Yeah.
Right?
In Munich, there was a talk to your point, right, about how to code in an environmental friendly manner. And I thought it was so cool because the guy was really going into details, like, for example, how do you improve performance so that you consume less CPU and then you end up consuming less power, right? And so many aspects.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really nice. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, I've been to the one in Lisbon, which was also really amazing. So speaking of the cloud and the future of the cloud, of course, we find it very exciting. It's very hot and happening. For those companies that are, let's say, they're fearing the cloud or they're afraid, it's like something scary. Like, what are the common fears that you hear about, and like, how do we make them, let's say, go away?
Yeah, there's a big fear for someone who maybe has worked in IT for many years. They know about servers. They know how to like touch the hardware and be right there with it and like pull wires and things. There's a real fear for some of these people. Maybe some of them coming towards the later part of their career, some years from retirement, and now all of a sudden the company is changing for doing cloud things, and they don't feel like they are included. And that is something you need to be very mindful about and very respectful about, because these people maybe have worked in the industry for 25 years. They're experts. They know everything about what the world used to be like, and now they feel like they're losing their foothold. So bringing them along respectfully and just helping them to learn in a way that is useful for them. That is a bit of a challenge pedagogically, but and some people won't come along. But that is actually a real fear that I am not included in that future. And as a guide to help someone come along, that's a handsome challenge to have, to say the least.
Can I propose a counter to that, which is, what about these new fresh faces coming out of universities, graduating, who've never known anything other than cloud? How do we not lose some of that fantastic knowledge that these other people, that, as you say, maybe nearing retirement age at this point, how do we get everyone along for the journey?
That's right. That's a challenge.
Yeah, but one thing which is particular in software development, I believe, is that, and that I don't see in other professions so much, is that we can really gain benefit from talking to young people who are just out of uni, because they learn stuff that didn't even exist when I was in engineering school, right? And I feel that this mutual respect between young generation and older generation is really important. So the only advice I can give to people, because you're right, it's a little bit a train moment. When the train was invented, well, people who were selling horses starting losing their job, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And so there is a little bit of that, but the advantage here is that really, if you kind of open open a little bit and welcome this new blood, right, and talk to them and understand. And also another thing that should never be forgotten is that I don't know any firm that is 100% in the cloud. Like they are all hybrid, and I don't even know any firm who is 100% in one cloud provider. Like it's always multi-cloud, right?
Correct.
And so so this hybrid aspect, and if only we had somebody who is managing the
Something
hybrid,
about Azure Arc?
like, yeah, who is managing some hybrid security thing. So for those who don't know, his husband is managing the program for that at Microsoft. But yeah, my point being that this can also be a very gradual migration, right? And I don't believe in immediate 100% on-the-spot migrations. That it just doesn't work, right? So just think about migrating gradually. Maybe you can have some of your services there, maybe some Azure functions to start with. They are not really frightening so much, And once you understand how it works, then you can gradually go there.
There's been some very good, some controversial articles recently. I'll draw examples to Basecamp, who've very publicly said we're ditching all cloud, it's too expensive, we're going the exact opposite way, building our own infrastructure. There was a recent one from Amazon where they said about how they consolidated a microservice set up for one of their Prime Video encoders to be a monolith, and basically are just running it on a big server or a farm of servers. And so it's an interesting scenario where companies are sort of finding actually where the right fit is. Cloud, all the things, probably isn't the right approach.
I mean, it's not, there is no magical solution to any problem. This is tech, right? It's engineering. There is never a 100% black or white solution, right? And again, right, I have tons of respect for those experiences, and I feel that, okay, if you had that experience and it happened for you, that's fine, right? But at the same time, it doesn't mean that the same experience is going to happen to everybody, right? We also have tons of success stories.
I mean, that brings us back to exactly what we were talking about before, and it kind of makes a circle here, which is convenient. The point is, you need to learn about these things and the services, again, that are in the platform and the fundamentals. When you get that wrong, your cloud experience can be really bad. And that is all based in learning, experience, and knowledge, and trying things out. So it takes time, and it might feel really uncomfortable. We haven't done this before. I don't know how to do this. And to that exact point, you have to learn about it gradually and get into it gradually. Be hybrid, because that's what it's going to be, and then try to grow an experience that is positive. When you throw everything into the cloud just because we need to go there fast, it's going to probably function, but it's not going to be great. And that experience can be expensive, feel insecure, feel out of control, and all the things. And that's kind of what is reflected in some of those articles. Like they tried a full-on approach, and they got bit. And now it's the cloud's fault? No, it isn't. You just approached it incorrectly, right?
Yeah, I think one good advice that we can probably give to anyone is don't follow buzzwords.
Like AI.
I mean, and I mean, the case you mentioned specifically, microservices, it was such a buzzword, right? And so, yes, they can be very useful in some scenarios, but it's probably also over-engineering your solution in many cases. So find a good compromise. And AI, same thing.
Containers, right?
Yeah.
That's a wonderful one. Yeah. We need a cluster of containers to run all our containers. Yeah, sure. Do you really? Do you really? Do you know that you need that? Or maybe you should do something else, right? But that's the problem. You follow buzzwords that you're definitely going to get burned.
We have a great session coming up a bit later today on common Azure traps. So tune in for that one. I'm sure we'll be covering a lot of the same sort of stuff.
That's probably going to be a similar thing. For sure.
We've unfortunately reached the end of our time here, but you've both been wonderful guests.
Thank you.
And I'm sure these conversations will continue. Magnus, Laurent, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Izzy, of course. We'll see you for the next session in a moment.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you so much.